Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome to my video on how to set up Visual Studio Code, where I'm going to also show you my personal setup for Visual Studio Code. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Norbert BM and this is my coding channel. Now, at the moment, Visual Studio Code is the most powerful code editor out there. There's also Atom, Sublime Text, or Brackets. You can try them out if you wish, but I prefer Visual Studio Code. So at the end of this tutorial, you will be able to download and install Visual Studio Code on Mac and PCs, know your way around the user interface, also known as the UI, create, open, edit, and of course delete files and folders in Visual Studio Code, set up your own little server in order to avoid clicking that refresh button, that's really annoying, also saving and setting up autosave, saving files and setting up autosave, changing the display language, of course. Visual Studio Code comes in many languages and maybe English isn't your primary language. If you wish to change this, I'm going to show you how. Also change the default browser. Visual Studio Code has as a default browser Chrome, and you could also set up Firefox, you could also set up Internet Explorer, Edge, I believe, but I didn't find a way to set up for Opera. I think I have to have Opera installed. I'm going to check that out. And I also didn't find anything on Safari, so let's see about that. I'm also going to show you how to navigate the minimap, toggle on and off word wrap, depending on your preferences, of course, interface zoom and font size, for those of you who like to see things big or small. And last but not least, my top Visual Studio Code extensions, of course, which without I cannot leave. So, hope you're excited. See you in the video. Okay, so from where to get Visual Studio Code? Well, if you do a quick Google search, then you will quickly land on Visual Studio Code at visualstudiocode.com. Just click on the website, and from here you can download Visual Studio Code. Now, depending on what operating system you are, it will appear here. I'm on a Mac, so automatically it appears on a Mac. But if you wish to change it to a Windows or Linux, then please feel free to do so. You just have to click here and then install it. Now, there is another way. Also, there are two Visual Studio Codes. There is the Insider Edition. Let's just click on this. So what's the difference? Well, Insider Editions get much quicker updates and more often. Sometimes it's annoying. You will always see down in the left corner a update pop-up, but mostly the updates, and there are also beta to late beta updates. So I didn't find any problems with that, but try them out yourselves. So let's go back and let's download Visual Studio Code for your operating system. Overseas, a download will appear and it's going to download Visual Studio Code. Now this is going to take a bit depending on your internet speed. So let's just fast forward and let's say we have Visual Studio Code downloaded and let's say we install it. It's just a straightforward installation. Click next, and it's going to be installed. And if you have installed Visual Studio Code, then you're going to be greeted with this empty Visual Studio Code interface. And this brings me to my next talking point. Navigate a bit around our user interface. Now on the left side, you will have your, a couple of buttons. If you click on the first button, this is your Explorer tab. The Explorer tab, you can either open up folders, clone repositories. Repositories we're going to talk about a bit later. Actually, repositories are files sent to GitHub using Git. From here, you can create files, save files, so far and so on. Then you have your search. You can search anything within a specific file or folder. Okay, so as soon as you have something in here, you can then search it from here in the entire environment. The next tab will be your source control. From here, using Git, you can fork then files to your repository. Then you have the debug panel. Well, debug is mostly used for Python or C# or C, but if you're sticking to web development, you can also use it, but I'm not using it that often. And down here, we have our extensions. And for the extension tab, we're going to come back a bit later on. Okay, so let's close this. If you move down here, you will have your account. I'm basically logged in with my GitHub account. And down here, you will have your settings button, which will then open up your settings panel. Now in your settings panel, you can go to settings itself. You can open up the command panel, which is extremely useful. I'm going to show you this a bit later on. You can take a look at all of the shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts. I'm also going to show you a couple of keyboard shortcuts. You can change colors, theme colors, icon colors. You can sync up, which is extremely important. And also when you're going to get an update, you'll see this turn to red or have a little balloon here. Okay, now in your right side, this is where your code will be displayed. You can also use a grid system to have multiple codes opened, and I'm also going to show you that later on. Okay, now let's see how can we create, open, edit, and delete files. Well, first thing first, you can either go ahead on your desktop and just create new folder, and let's just call it VS. What is happening? VS Code Test. Now there's a couple of ways of opening this folder. You can either take it and drop it in here, and there we go, we have a folder opened. Now, a very important lesson, you cannot create files without them being in a folder. So I can't just go ahead, and if I wouldn't have this folder open and create a file, you need to have a folder in your Visual Studio Code in order to create a file. So let's create a file by clicking on this file icon up here, and this will create a new file. So I'm going to create an index.html file, and there we go, we have our very first file. You can also create a second file, a CSS file. Let's call this style.css, and let's also create a main.js. Up here you have your open editors. I usually have them closed because I have these tabs up here which signify each file that is open. So as I said, let's create a main.js. This is a JavaScript file, and let's start up with a boilerplate. I'm going to hit Shift and exclamation mark, and this is going to, let me just make this larger. This is going to launch Emmet. You see, Emmet abbreviation just means it's going to create a doc tab. So if I hit enter, it's going to create a doc type of HTML5, and this is just basic starter boilerplate for HTML5. Now we have all these files here, and if we take a look in our folder, open up this folder, you also see we have those 3 files in our folder. Now if I create here another file, let's create a, let's create a folder. Let's delete this again. Of course, you can also create folders. Let me actually do that. I'm going to create a folder. So new folder, and within this folder is called this SAS. And within this folder, I'm going to create, let me go back. Now I'm going to create it using Visual Studio Code. You will already see it. It's in Visual Studio Code. It's going to go in here, click on it, and then say this is the main SCSS file. Okay. So basically, if I close this up, you can also create in this folder another folder. Right click, new folder, and let's say partials, and create here a new file. Let's create a couple of files. Variables.scss. This is a partial. Create another one. Config.scss. Okay, so basically this is the way we create files. Now how can we delete a file? Well, either we right click and hit on delete, and boom, the file is gone. You can also delete it using our keyboard, using the delete key, or control or command and backspace on a Mac. Now if they're deleted, they are either in your recycle bin, or if there are larger files, depending on what your recycle bin is set to, they're deleted permanently. Now let's see, how can we open this file? Actually, let's type something here, h1, and this is how to set up VS Code. Set up videos VS Code. So how can we open this file? Well, I'm going to show you this first of all, the old way. Go here in your Finder or in your folder and double click on it. So we're going to open up our index.html, and it's going to open up how to set up Visual Studio Code. Yay! And let me just zoom in a bit. Now, because we don't want to do this, let me show you how you can set up your own server. So if you go back in here, because let me first of all show you something. If I create here a h2 and say create server, hit save, and you can save a file by either going up and file, save, or command S on the keyboard. And this actually brings me to our next topic. You could also go here to down to the manager tab, click on settings, and let's type in save. And from here, you can then select your autosave, which I usually have it at every 2 minutes or every minute it should save, depending on how you wish. And also you need to set it as on focus change or after a delay. Whatever you wish, I have it after a delay usually. Okay, and you can set the delay time here. So up here in the settings, type in save, and then go to autosave, set it to after delay, and then type in the delay time. Okay, so let's close the settings tab. We saved here, but nothing happened here. So what we have to do is we need to click on refresh. Now, in order to avoid this, because if I create another one, a H2, I hit refresh, and although I hit save, nothing happened. Now I have to refresh. Now it's refreshing. We can use live server. Live server is an extension. So back here in your navigation, you're going to go to extensions and search for live server. And this one is it. Now I already have it installed. If I would have not installed it, then this would be green and you can install it. Now if you have it installed, it's actually a pretty straightforward installation. Just click on it, it's installed. You don't have to restart anything. But if you do have it installed and you go to an HTML file, down here you will see that, actually let me close up this page and make this larger. Okay, and now we can either right click here and click on open with live server. So this option will appear, or you could go on your index.html file, right click, open with live server, whichever option you wish. Now, after you right clicked it, it's going to open up in your default browser. Usually that is Chrome for me, but I just changed it really quickly for the purposes of this tutorial. So let me just show you what will happen now. Either you have Firefox installed, either you have Google Chrome installed, it doesn't matter. It's going to open up in your default browser. So we have, let me stretch it to the right side now. If I would do something like a H4, now we have a server and save, some Control S is going to automatically show here. If I would change something, let's say how to set up Visual Studio Code up here in the H1, let's say comma, I love VS Code. Well, it seems that Mozilla Firefox is even quicker. It's automatically updating this. Okay, so basically this is how live server works. Now down here you will see port 5502. Usually it's port 5000. But because I'm running now on Firefox, this is turned to 5502. And this is basically just the port. And up here you also see the local IP, which is 127, this is 0.0.0.1, and the port of 5502. And also the file, the index.html file. Okay, now let's take a look how we can change the default browser. So we're just going to go on the Manage tab again, click on Settings, and then type in Browser. As you can see, down here in the Live Server settings, now this will only appear if you have Live Server installed. You can now change it to either Chrome, Chrome Private, Firefox, Firefox Private, Microsoft Edge, and Blisk. I don't know what that is. So let's change it to Chrome Private. Normally, you don't even have to hit save because it's automatically saving. If I close this up, now Go Live will appear here. If I click on Go Live, then it's going to start on Google Chrome this time. Okay, it's basically the same thing that we did up there. Let's do here a H5. Now we are on Google Chrome. It's actually pretty small. And I missed out Google Chrome. Also, if you wish to stop the server, you can just click on stop here. So if I click on this again, it's going to stop the server. Or if I right click and stop live server, it's going to stop the server. If I change something, if I delete this, for example, you see nothing happens. If I refresh, then it's going to lose the link between the editor and the web browser. So also here, it's going to lose the connection. So let's close this one up, the Firefox one. If you were on Google Chrome, then I would suggest doing the same thing but opening Firefox. Okay, now let's take a look at how we can change the language of Visual Studio Code, because right now it's in English, as you can see. So you would think if you wish to change the language, you would go to Manage, Settings, and then type in language. But this is actually not where you change the display language. This is where you change something else. You change the type of language, the coding language in your browser. So in order to change display language, you need to go to Settings, or the Manage palette, and open up the command palette. Now you can either click here on the command palette or use the shortcut key, which is Command Shift and P or Command Control P on a PC. And now all we need to do is search for configure display language. So open this one up, and as you can see, by default, English is installed as a default language. But you can also add additional languages by clicking on Install Additional Languages, and this will actually open up are extensions, and right here you can see Chinese appears, Japanese, Russian, Korean, Portuguese, French, German, Italian, Buongiorno, Turkish, and Polish, and choose whatever language is available or whatever language you wish. Okay, now let's move on to the minimap. And let me actually open up the HTML file, close this one up. So let's create some bogus text because I need a bit more code here. So let's type in lorem, and I'm going to use lorem 1000. Lorem and 1000. This is going to create me 1000 words of lorem ipsum. Now on the right side is our minimap. If I hold and click on the right side, then I can drag my minimap around, and I can now navigate through my code pretty easily. Also, if I scroll through it, you will see on the right side, it's going to indicate where I'm at with my code. If I click somewhere, maybe it's not that visible in this video, but when you're doing it, you should see a blue line. Now let's say we have an error. Let's say delete this. You already see this is turning into a problem. Also, if I would do blah, 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 just something, and let's say we're going to create a script tag here. I'm going to say var, though I don't use var variable, it's equal to null, and so far and so on. Close this up, and let's say function. And now, because I'm having an error, you see down here the code ends in an error. It's also indicated on the minimap. But let's open up a JavaScript file. You can see this much better. So let's say we're going to create here a function. Let's give the name test function, and we're going to set this to say hello world. So console log world. Okay, let's hit save. Now if I would to delete this parenthesis and hit save, you'll see on the minimap you will have a red line. This red line will indicate where your error is. Now you can also increase your minimap, and for this we're going to go to settings, and let's search for minimap. If we click on minimap, we will have a couple of settings. So first of all, controls where the minimap is shown. We can let me change this by dragging it to the side. So take a look on the right side. If I unclick, hey, where's my minimap? Minimap. If I take out this checkbox, then the minimap disappears. If you're annoyed with the minimap, you can drag it off. You can change the max columns that's going to be displayed. Let's say 500 is going to display more or less columns. You can change the render type. You can change the scale. Let's go to 3. It's going to be a much larger minimap. Also, I think we're going to see here much more. If I change this to 100 again, save. Let's go back to 1. See the minimap is much smaller. And you should play around with the settings. You can change the size, can be on the left side, the minimap, and so far and so on. Okay, now let's close up this setting. Okay, now next up, let's take a look at word wrap. And what word wrap actually is the text normally ends at a specific point, ends at the end of the viewport. Now I can toggle word wrap on and off, so let's just toggle it on again. If I type in here lorem ipsum, normal lorem ipsum, automatically it's going to end here. If I would now deactivate word wrap, click on it again, you can see it goes outside of my viewport. So basically that is what word wrap does. Now I usually have it active, is a much preferred way for me to code. Okay, so now let's take a look at interface zoom. For example, if I hold down command or control and press on the plus button, it's going to zoom everything in. If I press on the minus, it's going to zoom out. Also, you can change the font size. So if you go to settings and type in font and size, you will be greeted with the text editor font size. And you can, let me take this, move it to the right side. And let's just take a look what will happen if I change this to 20. You can see the font size is smaller, but this is different from zooming in and out. If I zoom in and out, the left side is also going to zoom, and also the settings and everything. If I just change the font size, let me zoom out again. If I just change the font size, then only the text editor's font size, so the code that we type in here is going to be changed. Okay, let's close this one up. And now let's go to my top Visual Studio Code extensions. Now there are a couple of extensions that you absolutely need, and there are some aesthetic extensions also. So let's go to the extension tab. This is on the left side right here. Let's click on it, and let me first of all delete this. Now up here, the very first time, you will see this installed extension. I have 30 extensions installed. You don't need all 30 of them. The installed extension tab will be empty for you. Now what I would suggest that you would install are the following. So first thing first, live server. I believe you already have it installed. Live server. And of course, live server does just what it says. It's going to create an integrated server for you. It's going to serve your web pages. And you don't need to constantly reload them. Now, for those of you who are using SAS, there's an excellent extension. It's a pre-compiler, and it's called Live SAS Compiler. And where do we have it? Okay, I also have it installed, and let me just show you how this works. So if I would go on the SAS file that I created, only here, I believe. No, it also shows here because it's recognizing that I have a SAS file. If I would go here, delete the SAS file, usually it shouldn't show this right here. Interesting, because it doesn't have anything to compile. Nevertheless, let's create a SAS file again. So let's call it main.scss. So I'm using the SCSS extension. You can also use the SAS extension. You know, the difference is curly brackets or not. So if I'm here and I would type something in, let's say the class of active is going to be displayed as block, and hit save, nothing happens. But if I click on watch SAS, then what this will do is going to create a CSS and a CSS map for me. Now what this does is compile my SAS into CSS. So if I would go down here and say that the parent should have a hover effect, and the hover effect will be that the text decoration is underlined. Okay, if I hit save, as you can see, I didn't type in that the class of active in the state of hover should have a text decoration, but I said that the parent element, okay, because I'm nesting this in here. Now if I go to my CSS file, you will see that, hey, this is the regular CSS that was compiled and created using the Live SAS compiler. And now this is readable by all browsers, because as you know, CSS or SAS is not readable by any kind of browser. It needs the pre-compiler, and that is what this extension does. Okay, so enough about SAS. If you want to learn more about SAS, I have an excellent SAS course and also a SAS crash course here on YouTube. Okay, so let's move on to the next extension, especially for you beginners and also for me, is the HTML and CSS, just a second, support, which, well, it kind of helps you type out HTML and CSS more easily. As you can see in the features, HTML IDs and classes attributes compile, supports liked and embedded style sheets, supports template inheritance, supports additional style sheets, supports other HTML-like languages, validates CSS selectors and demands. It's awesome, believe me. It saved my life at the beginning, especially when I was starting out with web development. Now the next extension, actually let's go in here, are pair bracket colorizers. Again, a exceptional extension for all of you beginners. If we go in a JavaScript file, let's say here we're going to create a if statement. So if something, then something should happen. And you know that a if statement also has an else, something else should happen. Now we could also use here another if statement, open and close parentheses, and open and close square brackets, and else. A second, should go else, something else should happen. And as you can see, the brackets, the parentheses, also if I use here else, then a const of array should do something. And we could also create here another square bracket, actually in here, and so far and so on. And you can see the color changes constantly. So what this means is if I click here, I'm going to know that this, because we have an error here, didn't I close something up? Yay, forgot the parentheses. So let's start from the beginning. This means that this square bracket ends here, yellow, yellow. This parenthesis ends here. If I would create another parenthesis in a parenthesis, for example, this parenthesis is in this parenthesis, you can see it has another color. So it's much easier for you to read code. Basically, that is what it does. It colorizes your parentheses, your square brackets, your curly brackets, and so far and so on. Now, for all of you JavaScript programmers, JavaScript ES6 snippets are exceptional. You have all the TypeScript, the React, the regular JavaScript, Vue.js snippets, all of them are in here, and you could also browse them and see, okay, if I wish to do a for loop, then I just have to type in for, and it's going to automatically generate a for loop for me. Okay, so it's pretty useful. Let me actually show you here something. So for each, and if I go down here, it's going to generate a for each snippet. So array for each, if I hit enter, it's going to generate a for each loop for me. Okay, next up, let's take a look at Prettier, which is again exceptional extension. If you have Prettier installed, you will, let's go to HTML. You will see down here the Prettier extension activated. If this has something like this, so I'm going to just delete this, boom, hit save, you'll see Prettier throwing an error. If you click on Prettier, I actually didn't know this for a very long time, it's going to open up the terminal, and you scroll up and you're going to see that it's going to indicate that at line 20 something happened. This is why it can't go any further. So actually we have to go up to line 19, put this back in, and Prettier is going to work. Now also, when you have Prettier activated, it's going to do the following thing. If I go to a CSS file, and let's say a class of hover again, and we're going to go in here, and let's say we're going to have the color and red. Now if I just hit save, boom, this is what Prettier does. It's going to close this up, and it's going to rearrange everything. Okay, also if I'm in an HTML file, and if I do something like a div with a class of container, and it should have an ID of something, and it's going to include a paragraph tag, which is going to have a class of par and a ID of another thing, something else, and it's going to have a text of hello, and hit enter and hit save. It's going to rearrange everything. Okay, so this is what Prettier does. It rearranges your code. Okay, another extension that I would strongly suggest is, if I can find it, code spell check. It checks if you type something out correctly, which in my case is essential because hello is not correct, but hello is correct. Okay, if I would have something like this, they can go and hover over it and click on quick fix, and it's going to search for whatever word you were looking for. So let's click on hello, it's going to correct your word. Okay, so for those of you like me who are not natively English speakers, this is excellent. Now let's also take a look at auto rename tags. This is an exceptional extension. So what this does, if I would go to this div, usually if you wish to change this to, let's say, a span tag, you would have to change this and also this. But because I have auto tag rename installed, if I do here span, it's going to change both of them, the starting and ending tag. Also the same thing around, so if I do a h2 at the end, then it's going to change the other one as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the most essential extensions. You can search around for other extensions. Oh yeah, last one is, of course, if you're a React user, ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native snippets are amazing. It's the bomb, I'm telling you. they will give you all of the snippets. So let's just go down here. RCC import React component is going to create a component, export class if you're still using classes, file extends component, blah 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 blah. I'm not using classes anymore, so I'm usually using, where do we have it? RFCE I'm also using. Then our AFCP, which is going to create also a prototype. We're going to use protos. And yeah, just check it out. Okay, everyone. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you have any kind of questions or suggestions. And also, if you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribing, because I'm posting new videos on a constant basis. So with this being said, catch you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.